I'm going to go over some basic soap carving techniques in this demo. I started with 3 different soaps just to see how they would carve up differently. This is a coconut oil soap, like a basic bath soap, and a glycerin soap, which has an oily feeling to it. It's a lot softer. Some of the tools we're going to use, some are the same tools that we used for carving clay. The paring knife was really handy. I used this tool a lot as I was carving. So each soap's a little different. This one's very sticky, the glycerin soap. The blue, the basic bath soap was the easiest to carve. That would happen to be Target brand, but you could also get like Dove soap, Ivory soap, I think would be about the same thing. It's kind of more of a typical bar soap. So this is a loop tool, usually used for carving on clay. And then I'm kind of drilling with a nail. See if I can drill all the way through the soap. And if you go too fast, you could break the soap, especially on the white one. The white one was more of a crumbly texture, but it still worked. Just go slow. And then it was very easy on that glycerin soap. Really, it went right through because it's so soft. A lot of you, I noticed, had some pretty nice tools for Sculpey, and a lot of those will work on soap as well. Especially metal ones or like the sharper plastic ones. You don't need anything very, very sharp to carve soap. It's really a soft material. I'm just trying some different textures and carving techniques on the different soaps. These are things you could add to your finished work. I wanted to experiment with cutting the soap up into smaller pieces to carve. So I'm going to carve a little jewel shape out of each soap and a little very small sphere. Notice that I'm cutting fresh edges all around my cube. I'm not using those edges, the original edges of the soap. My cut edges look a lot better. And then I'm cutting the corners off my cube to create this little jewel, faceted shape. And then to make a sphere, I'm carving off much smaller bits of soap, trying to round it out and create an organic shape, and that was more difficult than the cube. Even using your fingers to smooth out the facets and the edges create a different texture. I used some sandpaper. I actually put my my little sphere onto a push pin to help me hold on to it because it's so small. And the sandpaper did work on the soap. Fine sandpaper probably would work better. So the glycerin soap carved up a little differently. And with it being clear, it was very jewel-like. Again, I'm creating fresh edges on all sides of my cube. And they looked a lot nicer and a lot cleaner. I made a little sphere out of that too. And then the white soap, as you can see, is a little more crumbly, but it still works. And that's not particular to white soap. It's just that brand of soap, that coconut oil soap. So now I'm going to attempt to carve a cloud form from the blue soap, since the blue was the easiest to carve. I drew the outline first, and I'm going to have 3 layers of depth here, but first I will kind of cut out just the whole outer outline, the outer silhouette with my paring knife. It doesn't have to be perfect right now, just kind of rough cutting all the way around, and then I'll do my second layer of depth, and that's on both sides. Kind of tracing around with the knife, deciding how deep that layer will be, and removing the material because this is a subtractive process. So you remove material to create the form. And then the third level's next. I'm going to trace it with the awl, make that outline a little bit deeper, or any kind of pointy tool will work. The tip of the knife can work, you know, a skewer, a pen or a pencil. So the purpose of having these multiple layers of depth is to take the sculpture away from the rectangle of the bar soap. I want you to kind of transform it to where we don't look at it and necessarily see that original shape that you started with. So adding layers of depth, changing the volume in different places in the sculpture is going to help a lot with that. You can see how the soap is kind of waxy and kind of flexible. It's not very crumbly, this particular soap. So here you see the 3 levels. There's 3 levels on each side of the soap, actually. And our next step is to start rounding out the edges because clouds don't really have hard edges like that. I want it to look soft and puffy, and the loop tool works a lot better for rounding the edges than the knife. The paring knife will make facets, which might be perfect for your sculpture, but for this I wanted more of a rounded look. So this demo is just to kind of show you what it's like to work with the material. It doesn't necessarily tell you the rules of the assignment. That's going to be on your assignment sheet. The parameters of the assignment will all be written out, and that's something you can refer back to. And this is more to help you get a feel for the material and how it's going to work with the tools and what you can do with it. And what I'm doing with it, again, this is probably the most basic thing you can do with soap carving. You can do something much more complicated, much more interesting, actually. I just kind of wanted to get you started. Just going back in with the knife whenever I need to maybe get more definition. As you carve, you tend to lose some of your definition. As you round edges, you lose definition. So you might need to go back in with a sharper tool like the knife or the awl, something pointy, and put the definition back in to the form. So you're just really sped up. You'll see me carving the cloud. Fingernails are also a good carving tool. Sometimes it's the best way to get into a little hard to reach areas with your fingernail. And remember that we see this sculpture from all angles, all sides, and from the top. So in my form, the top was an area that it was easy to overlook. It was easier to think just about like the front and the back, but actually the top will be very visible. So I want those lines to be interesting, and I want the work to look kind of finished and neat. So I spent a lot of time cleaning up that top edge. The bottom edge is also really important. That's a place where it was tending to look more rectangular and more like the soap, and taking off some material around that bottom edge helped a little bit. A paintbrush is also handy to get the fine little shavings off because they are sticky. They'll stick back to the work. And that paintbrush handle ended up being a really good tool as well for rounding out my edges and smoothing out my surface. Let's get my puffy cloud shape. So now I've got the shape almost done. My form's almost done, but I'm going back in with the loop tool and kind of making each little node of the cloud a little bit puffier. So carving it just a little bit more. Another way you can change the surface of your sculpture is with water. I would test that first. It might do something you don't expect. I wouldn't use too much water, but that could really smooth the surface out. And here's my finished work. My cloud, my little experiments with jewel shapes.